Now, yes.
Okay, and they were asking to put down the. Yeah.
The curtains, huh? Yeah, okay. I do that.
Es ist interessant, weil ich habe Beforschung von Higher Education in Tansania und Kenia im Bereich Agrar für die Navigation. You don't have a lot of help. Let's ask that. Den Kurs auch genau dafür natürlich, weil ja auch die Zyklen von Wissens werden ja immer größer. Die haben unter anderem die Kurzzeit Brains ich spiele sie auch da sehr auch Ausnahmen ist das einer der wesentlichen Probleme ist dann institutionelle Fähigkeiten auch der Lehrende dazu leisten eigentlich. Die meisten Studium vielleicht gerade nur die Fänger, aber dann wird es direkt als Lecturer. Also wenn natürlich auch da aus der Uni ihre auch keine Frage, was brauchen die
It's not only here, it's also in the other rooms.
Yeah.
There's no special method.
I think I switched this all of them on and still not working.
That's for one, it should be this, if you go up and down.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay, it's working. What happened?
Hello, hello.
So maybe you can tell all the speakers, they stand here and really speak in this one. Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, this is a very good mic and
You can stand it now.
yeah.
You will be the.
Because if the mic is too close to each other, then it will be like
Yeah.
like something.
Okay, so this distance is okay?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So where will we sit? Go there.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session Amendments and Nutrient Management. It seems like you're all a bit tired, so we will try to take you on an exciting journey now in the world of amendments and nutrient management. We will look at different approaches and different methods in different parts of the world. Yeah, my name is Kira Fasta, and this is my colleague.
Gracias, Kofi Agbotui. So we'll take you on a journey from Europe. We'll fly to Africa. From there, we'll take a ship through the Atlantic and we'll go to Honduras. So
No, we will go to Nicaragua.
Nicaragua, yes. Maybe I wanted to go to Honduras, but later we might go to Honduras, yeah. It's good you are all smiling. And I mean, let us have, what will be the word? An active discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every speaker has 10 minutes, and we would like to ask you to stay in the 10 minutes. We will give you a sign when you have 8 minutes left so that you know that you have to finish. Yeah, and after your 10 minutes, we will have a short discussion. We are a bit tight on time because we sold a last minute ticket to a person who is sitting in front. It's Jamilo. He is not in the original plan, but he will also have his presentation today and in the end of other presentations. So, and we want to make sure that he also has enough time for his presentation.
So when you see me stand up, it means fasten your seatbelt. You are about to land when you are talking. So once she stands up, then that means we have landed and you have to onboard for the next passenger to come.
Okay, then we will start our journey with Bernhard Freyer, and he will talk about the restoration of nutrient and carbon stocks in smallholder for smallholders in African countries. Yeah, everywhere.
Hello, good afternoon. To say at the very beginning, there are a lot of data. You have not to digest all the data now, only the data I focus. But the data will help you later on to check if I made it correctly or wrong. Okay? Yeah. So it's, so to say, the whole story. Normally you write a paper for that, but I thought, put it everything in the presentation, that's it. So it's about nutrients and carbon stock. It's about feeding balances, which influence that. It's about stable manure and slurry. So all the elements of a farm. My name is Bernhard Freyer. I was the former head of the Institute of Organic Farming at BOKU in Vienna. Now I moved forward to another university after I retired from bureaucracy, so to say. They just took me over and I do nothing in bureaucracy. I only write and study and do research. That's super fine. Pierre is my PhD. Thomas Obertür is from APNI in Morocco, African Plant Nutrition Institute, and Frank Place is from IFPRI in Washington. He was also the one who gave me some funding to work on this topic. In brief, maybe I'm still in the air when you say it's enough. So in brief, long-term strategies, we need, these are the key needs for the farmers, systematically filling off the soil nutrient and carbon gap. We have a huge carbon and nutrient gap in the soils now. It starts some decades before, but now it's dramatic. The second is we need an annual management that's clear, nothing new, about both. Often we forget it's also about the carbon we have to manage, but in the recommendation it's only about inorganic or mineral fertilizer. Farm-specific adaptations to optimize is the biomass production. If you visit a farm, not in your four-wheel drive, you simply walk in the villages, you will recognize in a farm that there's a lot of fallow. There is nothing. There's simply nothing. And there is space for biomass production. Compost is not possible or feeding the animals if you don't produce biomass. And this is the starting point of all the systems where they are lacking. Recommendations where the people say, do composting, do green manure, etc., is nice. Green manure is also nice, but people need food. So you have to combine it. And here we are with the forage legumes. That's both. This is organic matter, it's root biomass, it's nitrogen, and it's protein for the animals, and that's milk. At the end, there is the integration of ex situ sources. I made a report on these ex situ sources, the organic sources in Africa, maybe 20-25% of that what is available, or only 20 to 25% what is available can be really used or cover the deficit in the farm. It's not enough. Agroecology is arguing reduce the mineral fertilizer. No, we have to turn around, we have to increase, but we have to do that in combination with the organic matter. Background well known, the soils are depleted, devastated, nutrient deficits and carbon deficits, besides other factors, weaken the productivity, that's clear. The recommendations to fill the gap are neither uptake by farmers nor the precondition given. There are reasons why, of course, there are exceptions, that's clear. Integrated models for practicing or for practice informing about the need to feed soils, crops, and animals are missing. I mean, everything together is missing. There are parts available, there are recommendations, but the whole cosmos is missing. I analyzed all the models, the ones specialized in minerals, the others in carbon, the others in feed balances, and so on. But the integrated model is missing. It's very complex, but it's necessary. Agroecology or regenerative agriculture or organic is recommending, isn't new. What they recommend isn't new, yeah. It's already known. If you do research into low input systems, articles in the 90s, in the 80s, farmer field studies, you find all these recommendations where you find now outside under the title agroecology, amazing. The practical challenges, however, are still the same, or mostly the same. So now the pressure is high to act. There's climate change, there's biodiversity loss, and there is food security deficiency, and there is a water problem. The whole disaster is now very, very present, but still the reaction in a systemic way is not prepared. It's nothing new, what I say. Yeah, the hurdles, mineral fertilizer, the cost, the quality. Many fertilizers are mixed with whatever, dust, and so on. Application, delivery in time, application rates, precise application in time, stoichiometry, so the interaction or the adaptation of the fertilizer towards the need of the crops is not given. Organic fertilizer in situ and ex situ, the same, the cost, low animal manure quantities and nutrient poor, low compost quantities, and so on and so on. These challenges are well known, and you can read that in, today I cannot say meters of bookshelves. Today I have to formulate it in gigabytes. In the internet, you can read all that, endless. Crop rotation, every farmer practically, also in Europe, is saying, yes, I have crop rotation, but I think this is a misunderstanding what crop rotation is. It's first of all poor in root biomass, and the forage legumes with 3 to 5 tons per hectare dry matter make the change in the system. But today there is more discussion about the pulses with less than 1 ton root biomass dry matter per hectare. This cannot change the system, obviously not. It's not possible. And by the way, also the early croppings are still missing. Tillage technology, I don't understand this approach that people say we need low tillage, no tillage, we need this and this and this technology. I would argue we need a technology which is adapted to the current soil situation and to the current crop demand. And this means we have a quite very diversified tillage approach and tillage understanding. Grassland is also well known, lack of management, seed material, low productivity, and there's a tenure problem, the same as it is with early cropping. Animal husbandry, the huge protein deficit, well known. Forage legumes would take over the role to cover a huge part of these protein deficits. And of course, low manure quantities. Land use, steep slopes use necessary for food production, but there is also often unused land, as I mentioned at the very beginning. And if you have the opportunity to go to any of these countries, go forward and look in the farms about fallow land. You will find a lot. So what I made, a model with all these balances, literature, calculation sheets, testing, adjusting. It's a long job, and I'm still not ready to create this model. Everything actually only with Excel, yeah, to find out the interaction, how the model is reacting. And I used for training my model one farm in Ethiopia around Lake Tana on a nitty soil with 2.6 hectares, 2 cows, 1 cattle, 4 sheep, and so on. In this context, and a maize and teff land use for the arable land, and around 0.5 hectares of pasture land. This is the farm on a nitty soil, very typical for the situation there, 1,000 to 1,500 millimeter biannual rainfall and temperature around 18 to 22 degrees. So I told you before, don't look at the data, look at the result, and I only refer to the result. Otherwise you get crazy, yeah? Yeah, I warn you, don't do that, yeah? So what I integrated are standard data, total nutrient content of soils. The majority of the discussion is always about the availability, but if there's nothing in the box, there is no availability. Yeah. Then nutrient carbon content, nutrient carbon balance, and feed balance, and household balances. Tillage currently not included. I have 2 minutes more? No?
1 minute more.
1 minute more. Then I go to the last slide. So these are all the data. These are all the calculations that you know I made it. Yeah. But then in prosa, I tell you the result. The balances of carbon because of the deficits are around 10 to 20 tons per hectare carbon, which is in deficit to regenerate the soils only, besides the annual maintenance. The nutrient deficits are in a similar dimension. That means we have a demand to regenerate a smallholder farm which is beyond the capacity. But still, the systems and the discussion and agroecology, they continue with carbon poor cropping systems first, and second, there is this sentence, we should reduce the mineral fertilizer application. That's absolutely far away from the reality. And I say that as somebody who was teaching and doing research organic farming over more than 30 years. I say we have to take the inorganic fertilizers, but the base is the carbon. Otherwise, the efficiency stays low. That's it, what I have to say. The other things, I think, in the article in October, 4 pages, then you have all the figures. Thank you.
So, any question? We will take
Questions?
2 questions for carbon.
So I'm wondering, sir, if you've ever looked at Mbeya, which is named after the city in Tanzania. Farmers didn't have enough chemical fertilizer. They didn't have enough manure. They merged them together in a sack and added a little water, a little bit of ash, carbon, sawdust perhaps, whatever they had, and allow it to start to break down for 10 days, just like kind of like we would do with a compost and turning. Have you run into that as a possibility for smallholder farmers to use, given that there's always limitations?
So there's a lack of carbon. We have to produce biomass. And with the biomass, there is carbon we can compost. And the nutrients, by the way, from the compost are from the soil stock. It's not a plus in general. It's only a recirculation of nutrients. Be aware about it. The same is with the animal dung and slurry. It comes from the soil stock. Yeah, because these farms' input from outside is relatively low. The more the input is increasing, the more certain share of nutrients are not from the soil, only from the soil stock, but from the input, logically. Yeah. But first we have to start the motor, and the motor is the biomass or the photosynthesis.
Thanks very much. I was wondering, what we see in cocoa plantations in Nigeria, very poor soils, never used any fertilizers. Still, when we add fertilizers, the yields even go down. So we're in this sort of, well, I don't know what happens there, but anyway, so the soils are definitely, and the plants are definitely not responsive. So I was just wondering, if you want to build up that soil fertility and responsiveness again, how do you go about it step by step? Because it's not just you put everything in and it works, right? You need to do this in a sort of stepwise manner. What would be your recommendations for taking this in a stepwise approach?
So I learned about mineral fertilizers 50 years ago or 40 years ago, I don't know. If the rate is high, it's counterproductive. The soils cannot digest that. It doesn't make sense. And in the case of Nigeria, we can clarify that. I'm also on the way in Nigeria. It's the question of the soil type, yeah, the carbon stock, and then having this information, we can start reflecting how we can develop something if necessary, yeah. But at the end, there is a nutrient flow out of the farm, yeah. That's it, yeah. It depends on the level in the soil if this is critical. On the other hand, the humus theory, it was cancelled in the last years. And now in the center are the microbes. Yeah, the 1 to 2 tons per hectare microbes are now in the center. Yeah, as those organisms who have a high impact on the availability of nutrients. And this should be also to keep in mind now more when we talk about how to develop the systems. But when the soils are empty, we have to start with biomass. Yeah. That's a must. There's no chance. Other ways are not possible. pH regulation, etc., etc., etc. That's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for a very inspiring talk. Thank you for a nice discussion, and we will now move to our next speaker, which is Celia Bühler, and she will be talking about composting coffee co-products in Nicaragua.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a different height as Mr. Breyer. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Breyer, for this. Oh, perfect, wonderful. For this, it was not coordinated, but it's the perfect introduction for my presentation, because we go from large scale and models to very hands-on study on composting, and exactly with this idea of recirculation, recycling nutrients. So I would like to take you to Nicaragua. It was actually not so far away from the frontier with Honduras, so I don't take on this. And I would like to talk to you about coffee, which has become my favorite crop, but it's not only about a personal preference, it's also a worldwide importance, as it is a large commodity that where 125 million people depend on it for their livelihoods, but also in terms of value. If we take the green coffee production worldwide, it's estimated the value of $23 billion. So that's an important crop worldwide and justify also this research. So in here, we talk about coffee and fertilization more specifically. So what's the issue there? The coffee producers heavily rely exactly on mineral fertilizer to ensure their yields, as it is at least in our case, really the cash crop from the farms. And on one hand, it's an economical constraints because it costs more and more for them to buy those fertilizer, but those mineral fertilizer also have a negative impact on the environment and on the soil, whether it's from their production or their application that is not only done in an optimal way. And on the other hand, we have an untapped potential, because if you take the weight of the fresh cherry, only 1 to 5% of it actually ends up in the coffee cup that you might have had during the day. So it means 99 to 95% of this fresh cherry weight is actually a waste, or as we like to call it, a co-product that has a potential to be reused and recirculated. In my case, I will talk about the waste the co-products generated from the fresh cherry to the green coffee and not beyond, because we are in the producing country. And depending on the processing of the coffee that you use, you have different co-products. So with the washed and natural coffee, you mainly have fresh pulp, mucilage, honey water, and parchment, which is the thin layer you have outer of the green coffee bean. And if you took the natural process where you dry the bean, then you get the husk, which is a mix of the dry pulp and the parchment. And for my presentation, I tell you to focus on pulp, parchment, and husk, as it's what I've used in my trials. So our idea was to use those co-products that were available either at the dry mill or at the farm level to actually produce valuable organic fertilizer, to eventually be able to reduce the mineral fertilizer input, reduce the cost, but also improve soil health. It was actually a private-public partnership, and why I mentioned it in the beginning, it's that contrary to many presentations we see where researchers come with an idea, here it was the other way around, where the private sector actually had a need and an idea and came to research institutions to seek support and to really do this project together. So we had two companies, Café Marer in Switzerland, a coffee importer, among other, and Breda Azul in Nicaragua, a dry mill. And then we had the Fiebel and Havel as research institutions. And we were also supported by the Swiss Innovation Agency with a small grant to conduct this pilot study on composting. So our idea was first to identify which type of organic material we had within this project and region and their suitability for composting, then to look at the strategies that were most suitable for the specific project, the potential of the produce compost on the coffee farms of the region, and also to see what farmers and producers already do in terms of fertilization, but also on co-product management. And what we did is that we had the expert from Fiebel coming a week, thanks to this grant that we received. And then we set up the compost pilot study, plant trial with lettuce in bags, equivalent to a pot trial, and 16 interviews with coffee producers. And for this presentation, I will focus on the aspects from the compost pilot study and the view from the coffee producers. So where we were in the north of Nicaragua, so you see actually the frontiers with Honduras there, and it's the Dipilto watershed, close to Ocotal. So you have a big difference in altitudes and also in precipitations over the year, as the dry mill was located at 600 meters, and the farms, there is an error, but they are at 1,100 meters approximately. So for the compost pilot study, we had two different parameters, namely the mixture of the compost, but also the cover types. So the first mixture was mainly based on parchment. It's the main co-products that we have at the dry mill. So the first mixture was around 60% of parchment with 30% of manure, some husk and mature compost to speed up the process. And the second mixture is more similar to something that we could do on farm with the same quantity of parchment and pulp, as if the coffee is processed and the pulp removed, it's done on farm and not in the lowlands. And then with the cover type, we had one with aeration and one without, so just the plastic cover, which would be kind of the standard also manner to do it by some farmers who do it. That is not ideal, and we wanted to show the differences between aeration, where you have the chimney effect in the compost, and maybe what is the easiest done with the cover type. And what we looked at in the different piles were the evolution of the temperature, humidity, the different gases, and also lab analysis. So punctual ones every 3 weeks to see the evolution of the forms of mineral nitrogen, and then final analysis mainly to see the nutrient contents of the compost we could produce, among other parameters. And those analyses enabled me to calculate 3 different fertilization scenarios. So one where we would try to meet the plant needs only with a mineral fertilizer. Here you have the composition, so 18,420 NPK. It's the one used on the farm. And one only with the compost we produced, one with the current practices of this case study farm, and finally trying to optimize and balance with a reasonable amount of compost, completing what's missing with the mineral fertilizer. So here you have just a selection of some results, and for the monitoring aspect, I decided to focus on the temperature evolution, as it is a widely used parameter, and it gives a straightforward indication also of the microbial process. And in a nutshell, from this graph, you can say, okay, the 3 piles, it worked, because you have this steep curve, a steep increase, then a bit of a higher point, and then it's slowly stabilized when compost is maturing. What you see from the blue line, it seems that the compost that was actually covered with plastic had a kind of unoptimal or suboptimal conditions, as the temperature didn't follow exactly the curves of the 2 others. But what you can see for the 3 of them, it's that even after 80 days of the trial, we're still at 55 degrees, which would indicate that the compost is not yet mature even after this time. And maybe a practical challenge was that this parchment we use is quite hydrophobic, so it took us almost 2 weeks to get the right moisture, and it also delayed the process and eventually led to some nutrient losses in the beginning. For the nutrients, what we saw is that the 3 composts that we did had relatively similar N-tot content, so between 2.3, 2.5 kilo per cubic meter of fresh matter. But for example, the one with the pulp had a way higher potassium content, which makes it like kind of the compost C with the pulp would be kind of the most interesting or complete from the 3 that we tested. But all of them were relatively low in phosphorus, and it's also valid for the compost I compared it to that were produced on farms and not in my trials. And maybe just something to highlight is that the vermicompost that we also looked at and would be an option was the one with the most nitrogen. And for the scenarios, so you get here the quantities of mineral fertilizer we would use only with mineral to meet the need. And then only with compost, it's interesting, it would be between 36 and 49 liters per tree per year. So in terms of bucket, it would be, I don't know, 7 to 8 buckets that you bring to your trees every year, which is, of course, not realistic. And interestingly, under the current practices, we see that we have a reduction of almost 70% of mineral fertilizer, but it's actually because the producers cannot afford fertilizing their crops to the needs because they just don't have the cash flow to buy the mineral fertilizer. So it's not a strategy, it's a constraint. And if we optimize and use the compost C, for example, applying around 8 liters of compost per tree per year, and then completing with the mineral, we could achieve theoretically a reduction of 20% in the application of mineral fertilizer. So the producers, they already follow kind of a dual strategy fertilization with some sort of organic inputs. Most of them reuse the pulp in some way, but often not in a controlled way. So there is room for improvement there, and already an interest from them to receive more information on organic fertilizer, and what they prefer would be actually a group training. So in conclusion, we can say that it is possible with what we have on site to produce valuable organic inputs if we have controlled conditions, but it's important to know that at least the compost we produce, they cannot alone replace the mineral fertilizer, and we need to be transparent about it. And I think it also joins what you were saying before, trying to recycle as much as possible, but it's still not like, we shouldn't claim that compost is the only solution and that we can completely replace. And finally, I think it's also, I quoted you, or I note what you said before, that we need a technology adapted to the current soil conditions and current plant needs. And I would add that it also needs to meet the farmers' interests and own needs. So to offer them a set of adaptable practices they can choose from and adapt for their context. And what is needed, and I couldn't do, is the cost benefit, financial analysis, and of course, more trials directly with coffee plants, but with perennial, it takes a long time. So thanks to the project team, and thanks to you for your attention. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. I wish this was reserved for the last because now I'm thirsty for coffee. But at least we can ask some questions and then probably maybe we can survive some coffee. Yeah. So, yeah. So this would entertain about 30 questions.
Yeah. Well done. Thank you. I assume that or we should know, and you know that the compost added value is also that we have micronutrients that are recircled. We have usually not in the mineral fertilizer. We can have, but usually we don't have. And the other issue is that the humidification factor of compost relative to, let's say, straw is much more relevant in a scale from 0 to 1. Humidification of compost, the factor is 0.3 to 0.4. Straw is around 0.1. Yeah, and this makes a difference. And it depends how the system is adjusted. Where the deficit is, the compost is relatively more successful. But I'm happy that you also mentioned that we need the mineral fertilizers to fill a certain gap if it's there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's also a region where you have very little livestock and access to manure. So it's even more important to stress out this point, because eventually with manure, you could combine those two. Yeah, but thanks.
Yes, thank you for the interesting presentation. I just wanted to know whether you compare different technologies to make compost. You mentioned vermicompost, that is with worms, I think, and Colombia has a long tradition of working with these worms to make compost. Did you include these differences in your analysis?
Yeah, so I had initially the plan to do windrow composting that I showed, and I also had some boxes with vermicompost, especially for the pulp, because we were interested in treating the pulp fresh. And the issue I had is that it was invaded by the BFS, black salty fly larvae, that would eat it so fast that the worm just had no food anymore. And then I visited a farmer who is doing it at a large scale. He only fertilizes with vermicompost made out of pulp and manure and actually pre-compost it before giving it to the worms, and it works well. And I also have example from Sucafina who had project in that. So it's definitely something that exists that I tried, but I was unfortunately unsuccessful.
No one wants a taste of coffee? Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Celia, for a very nice presentation. And we will now move on to fertilizer microdosing. It was originally planned to be presented by Narcisse. He cannot be here today, so Michael Büntrop is so nice to take over and do the
Fine, yeah.
presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm stepping in for two colleagues, PhD students who could not make it. I think one for reason of visa problems. I would also have loved that Andreas Burkhardt, many of you will know him, would have stand here, because what I'm presenting here is in principle his invention, or at least he was a pioneer of it, fertilizing with microdosing. So very small amounts of fertilizer brought into very near to a plant and we will see what it makes. It brings me back to my PhD times, because with Andreas Burkhardt in the early 1990s, I published several papers on this. I was the economist, he was the plant producer. And so it is a technology which is around already for 40 years at least. And what we have tried here is to resume a little bit what is known and where are there still gaps. So it is it comes very close to what you said. We need this optimization between organic and inorganic. This is a way here to optimize inorganic fertilizers for plant production and biomass production. So what is the background? In sub-Saharan Africa's agriculture, we mostly have smallholder farmers, family run, with primarily subsistence, but also with a surplus for sale. Very small holdings, that is, I think that is 2 hectares, not 0.2, so the 2 hectares of land holding is the average size, and it is family-centered labor, so no very few machinery and very low hired labor input. The long fallow periods of former times are no longer practical because of population growth. Also some mechanization is there, but although mechanization does not play a very big role in sub-Saharan Africa up until now, 80% of labor is done manual. And a high degree of land is degraded. Here we talk about 80%. I also know numbers of 30, 40, 50%. I don't know exactly what it is. 80 seems to me very high, but there are some sources obviously which claim so. And the second plea for this microdosing is we have a low efficiency of mineral fertilizers due to nutrient losses, maybe also soil organic carb or PhDs. I think there are many reasons. Sometimes fertilizer is not even effective at all on some sites, and combinations of plant and soil. And on average, we only have 18 kg of fertilizer use, not even of mineral content. Versus, just as a comparison, more than 100 kilogram globally. So the combination of low soil fertility, very high costs of fertilizer, and low incomes, high fertilizer cost means farmers are not able to purchase and to apply, means low farmer productivity, low yields, low productivity, and yeah, that leads to poverty and an socio-economic and ecological cycle of impoverishment. So what is then about microdosing? The idea of microdosing is to apply very small quantities of nitrogen and phosphorus, that is a typical dosing, directly to the seed during sowing or near to the seedling, shortly after germination. So you see on the picture, you have a small plant here, and then the fertilizer is applied very close to this plant to allow it to an early a better germination, and particularly that is the main effect, better root development, so that these small plants have a better productivity. You see here improved crop productivity by 85 to 174%. This is numbers from several decades of experimentation since the 1990s by Andreas Burkhardt. In various countries of sub-Saharan Africa. So for the farmers, that means reduced fertilizer costs. They have, these farmers do not have access to credit. They do not have their own means, financial means. So that is a very big advantage here. This screen here, where is the technician? The screen does no longer work. I haven't touched anything. But I can continue with this. For me, it doesn't matter. But
Screen is, yeah, Zoom is still there. Yeah, we're still sharing the screen. Where were you?
yeah,
Here. Yeah, and now it should work. It's moving.
you see that is
Yeah, this is broken, but
broken.
this,
Okay.
here is everything's okay.
Okay, very good. So not only yields are increasing and crop productivity, but also farmers' incomes here by more than 50%. And we have a lower financial risks for smallholders, so that they are more able to and dare to invest in fertilizers. In addition, we have also some ecological advantages. We have a minimization of leaching and of volatilization of fertilizers into the air and into the groundwater. And so we have reduced environmental loss. Here you see, there will be two pictures about the effect of unfertilized versus micro-fertilization. And another picture with different, I think that is with different doses of fertilization. You see the visual differences. No? You have seen how much that means in practice. So it can, and Andreas Burkhardt told me, and that is, I think that is also an outcome of several years or decades of experimentation. It is not so much the amount of fertilizer which counts here. It is the early root development, which then means that the plant is better able to go down into this ground and to exploit what is in the soil already. No? So in the end, it's also a kind of additional depletion, and that is important for the consequences, for our conclusions. So it has already successfully used in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Sudan, Kenya, and Zimbabwe. It has spread there. A big disadvantage, or a big problem beyond that, of course, farmers still have to purchase fertilizer. It is not reduced to zero. This cost is that it is slightly more labor intensive. You have to curb down and place that fertilizer. Pardon? Yes, indeed, yes. Maybe you also have a little bit less weeding because you do not spread the fertilizer, but it comes in a time when labor is very scarce on it. This is during planting. So this period is very crucial for farmers to expand their fields. So it is disturbing. It is definitely also depends on the soil, whether you can have a hard soil where you can need a tool to place your fertilizer, or where it is sandy and you can simply dig the hole with your foot. So it is definitely a bottleneck for the application of this methodology. And yeah, it has been mostly tried with cereals, but there is also ongoing testing with other crops, for example, legumes. And then, of course, not nitrogen, but maybe phosphorus. So and that is already the last slide. There are big advantages. There are still some disadvantages. Definitely this technology can be further expanded, but what is necessary, and that is our policy recommendations. First of all, you need small packages. And very often this is not the case. You do not find small packages on the market, but only the 25 or 50 kilogram sacks. So either farmers have to come together. Yeah, it is, in any case, it is a disadvantage. So small packages, that could be simply a recommendation to the private sector, but in many of these countries, we have monopolized and governmental fertilizer distribution systems. So we need here, it could be a policy recommendation and not only, let's say, an incentive for the private sector. Second one, I think in many places you need this investment in low-cost application tools. Means a tool which allows to furrow, to make this little holes and reduce the drudgery of the work to place the fertilizer. Thirdly, the program should be embedded in existing agriculture extension services. Very often nowadays, the extension services still stick to the very old traditional broad-based fertilizer recommendations and rates. So it must be accepted. Then it should be combined with organic matter and soil conservation. So if we have higher biomass production, we need to keep them in the field. No? If they are then brought out for different uses, then we have a depletion and not a stabilization of the system. So it cannot be a standalone technology. There should be a strategic recognition. I would argue that this is part of an agroecological system. We do not eliminate mineral fertilizer, we reduce it and we increase efficiency. For me, that would be an ideal role model for agroecological and not for organic, to make that difference, technology. And finally, in many of the countries, we have fertilizer subsidies, which in some cases really cost the governments a fortune. In Malawi, I have a number, I remember, almost 20% of the entire government, not only the agricultural ministry, go into fertilizer subsidies. So redirect this fertilizer subsidies, reduce it, and maybe spend more on extension, on this implementation, improvements, combination of fertilizer with simple tools, so that we have a better cost-effective package, which does not only promote the fertilizer, but a more integrated system. And that's it. These are some references.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's really nice that I have the chance to grill Michael Brüntrup. This is, of course, nothing new, as you said. and the problems attached to it are still the same. One of the things that really stands in the way of it is that, first of all, you can't apply it in the same way to all the crops. It's a very much different if you plant a maize or a bean or a barley or a wheat or whatever. First of all, planting depth is different. And then also one of the issues is that you mentioned, for example, here in your presentation, 1.5 grams. The problem is that these 1.5 grams are something else everywhere. Yeah, you might even just go to the next village and it contains something else. So depending on the mix of the fertilizer on the market, you may not have any K because the only thing you get is DAP, for example. And so there is no way of really doing a general recommendation on how to do microdosing because it really depends enormously on the availability of what you actually have in the vicinity. But the point I wanted to make is actually, you said that we are decreasing the use of fertilizer with that. Actually, I would say we are actually increasing it because in the systems where we worked, farmers didn't apply any fertilizer. Yeah. And when you give them a Coke cap and a recommendation how much to take out of this 25K bag, yeah, then they suddenly start adding fertilizer and finding it actually funny. Yeah? Because it's a nice thing to, poke a hole and do some fiddling around and to get much more attention to the crop. So I think actually it increases fertilizer use, but it has the problem that really you cannot really make general recommendations. So what does that mean? Does it mean that you have to do research based on the systems where you are, or do you have to kind of reform the fertilizer sector as such? Because 1 year in Ghana we got DAP, next year we got NPK, the year after we only got N. So what do you do?
No, of course, this does not change the fertilizer market and politics. It is not about markets, it's very often about politics, because in these countries, fertilizer is a highly political issue. And that doesn't change, of course. No? It is a better application, less costly, so you need maybe, for example, less subsidies, but it does not change everything. And for your first remark, of course, if you have a beans or a sorghum or maize, of course you need different fertilizers again. So you have to research on these systems. For example, Burkhard, in our project now, where I'm again working here with Narcisse and Geronimo, we are trying this in agroforestry systems in the northern Benin, where that has not been tried out before. The soils are different. It is on maize and not on sorghum or millet. So yes, there must be adaptation research. But the principle of these low doses to allow farmers to reduce their risk and their costs, that is the key issue. And then within this, let's say you can call that philosophy, then we need, I assume, the same kind of trials as we have for all other combinations of crop and fertilizer.
Yeah, I can only add. I think starting with my results, we cannot fill the soils again with all these nutrient deficits. So we need a strategy, for example, like that. A technology relatively seen on paper to apply these fertilizers is simple. Yeah, it's not a very specific technology, but we have these hurdles like we have with the middle fertilizers. By the way, we have the same hurdles now with the organic fertilizers at the market. They are punched with whatever. The NPK on the bag is not similar to that what is inside the bag, and so on and so on. There is a delivery problem, and so on and so on. And it's a business, yeah? So whatever we touch, we have this background noise, what is possible under the circumstances and not. But this is a message that we have to strengthen all what the farmers can do by themselves in the farm and at a village level. which is not enough to fill the soils with nutrients, but this is an option. And finally, organic farming is acting with mineral fertilizers, not with nitrogen fertilizer, but with all the other ones.
Thank you. And because of time, sorry, maybe we can continue after and we'll go on to the next. Thank you, Mikael, for such an insightful.
Slide.
Okay. Our next presentation will be from Tuyu Nguyen on maize responses to different
right.
fertilizers.
So welcome to my talk. My name is Thuy Nguyen from University of Bonn. I will give you bring you from Nicaragua now to Ghana, or let's say in general to Ghana in the cropping system in Ghana. So I'm not alone today. My partner, project partner, also some of them are here from University of Ghana. So very nice that you are here. That I be more competent. Yes. So then we can try to bring you with another approach, experiment, and also the crop modeling system. So would like to present you, let's say, some initial results from our work in BMBF project, and then we would like to analyze, let's say, the may respond, the may yield response to different fertilizer treatment using different crop models. So some context that we have here that maize is very popular crops in Ghana. Of course, that the increasing of the population put a lot of pressures on the food demand and to close the gap, and then the food, to bring the food more to the population, that people need to convert, let's say, forests, and then of course lead to the land degradation. Also, we have another factor, climate change, also put on this pressure on that. And I think that the farmer or the policy maker need to find, let's say, kind of sustainable intensification practices. This is not new. There's a lot of practices were there already. And of course, that farmer have already adopting, let's say, different fertilizer types. I think you mentioned some years ago, different fertilizer type, manure, no manure, and then inorganic blues, let's say, mix up with the manure. And of course, different rates. So we asked, okay, whether this is really sustainable, or what is the perform of that practices. And I think there's a lot of work have been done, a study in the field trial that have been done, and I think, but then the data, it's still, let's say, not comprehensive, or we have lacked the data together with another factor like climate, also crop. And also we have seen that there are a lot of work have been done, but different report about the results. And it because depend on the soil heterogeneity, depend on the different sowing times, also fertilizer inputs. And we thought, okay, crop modeling could be a tool that could be used to test different practices. And of course, if we want to recommend this sustainable intensification practices to the farmer, to the policymaker, we may use the crop model for upscaling, but how uncertainty of this approach can be, we do not know. And of course, that we come with some questions that we say we would like to investigate these fertilizer practices based on field trial, also with the crop model. And we would like to compare different crop model, because there are different crop model have different, let's say, model structures. So we don't know what uncertainty behind this crop model prioritization. And we want also, because the lack of data, input data, we may have lack of soil data, lack of climate data. And if we draw out, let's say, data input from different sources, so what is the uncertainty? What is the risk behind that? So so we have the two colleagues are there. So we have two crop model from University of Bonn, Simplex and TT2025, and then Upsin, also well-known crop model, and it's running independently, but it's under the same modeling protocol. And we run in parallel. We have let's say, really frequent meeting to exchange about the crop result, the modeling results. So the first part that the model need to be calibrated, and we use one set of data set from Nyang Pala, which is managed by the researcher in 2014 for Somei. And we use for, let's say, fertilizer treatment, we have manure, 5 tons per hectare, inorganic, and also mix up inorganic and hard manure. And we have quite good, let's say, from my understanding, that good crop growth data set, we have phenology, leaf index, biomass, grain yield could be used to fine-tuning the crop model. And this is the field trial. But then we say, okay, maybe after calibration, does a model perform well? And we need to validate the model, and we use another location. So we have 19 farmer fields, which is managed by the farmer. So very natural condition and managed by the farmer. And we use this data with different, let's say, fertilizer types, manure 25 ton, and then 1.5 ton in Dimabi and in Langa. So, and I think that could cover, let's say, wide range of the fertilizer types and also rate. So, and after this part, the third step that I would like to show today, that we draw also the input from different climate and different soil data source. So we have the soil grid database, which is available, and you can download, and it is 250 meter by 200 meter resolution. And another data set from FAO, Harmonized World Soil Database, which is another spatial resolution. For the climate, we have different two sources. We have aggregate of 510 by 10 kilometer resolution. And for NASA Power, we have, depend on the variable, climate variable, we have 50 to 100 kilometers. So they are different in terms of data quality and different in terms of spatial resolutions. And we use this for our modeling run. Okay, so the first result we would like to show now for you, the leaf index. So it is very important variable for the crop growth model. Maybe some of you may know that the leaf index is the unit of leaf per unit of soil. And here show you in the left side that on leaf index measure for different dates in fertilizer treatments. And then for the observe, it's gray, the orange is the APSIM model, crop model, and also Lintun-5 in blue. So the left side show you that also the fertilizer treatment, and on the right side, it show you the control is no, let's say, fertilizer. You see that there are differences in terms of leaf area growth. In terms of modeling performance, you can see that in general, two models are performed well. But you see that also APSIMs also overestimate in some dates, let's say 4th of August on 27th of August, something like this. And then I think that also already some uncertainty in terms of modeling performance. So we are not only focused on the final process, but we would like to understand the mechanism behind the crop model. So we plot here the nitrogen index. It is simulated by two crop models. The left one, you can see the different color, different curve for APSIM, the left one. And the right one is simulated by Lintun-5, a two crops model. And the vertical bar show you the fertilizer events that the research they put in the trial. So you see that two crop model, you see that they have different structures. So we expect somehow some decrease in terms of nitrogen stress simulated by the two crop models. But at least that we see that two crop model capture the effects of the fertilizer. Yeah, so they say the control have the no fertilizer, have highest, let's say lowest, the nitrogen stress index mean highest stress level compared to the other fertilizer treatments. So this is very good because we want to understand also the modeling behaviors. So of course that we want to see how the model simulate the grain yield, because grain yield is very important. And then we see, okay, for the calibration, depend on the model, I think APSIM perform better than Lintun-5. Also for the validation, we have also performed well for the control. And as I said before, we use also farmer field, 19 farmer fields for different locations in Langa and Dimabi. we see that also in general perform well, but I think that Lean-25 perform overestimate, I think even 2 tons per hectare. So depend on the the location that you have. You know? So the last one I would like to show here that now when you put different climate and soil and run the crop model to crop model, what would be the uncertainty? So this graph show you the relative change to the observed yields. So you see that answer for the two treatment control and inorganic. So we see that even we use the file one's harmonized one soil database that said for upstream, you even let's say overestimate 50% of the yields, but also for soil creep, I think the upstream also underestimated. Also for the Lean-25, they have also different behavior. And we see the same story for the climate data. Quite interesting for that. I can see that from that, we can say, okay, there are different uncertainty depend on the model, also depend on the fertilizer treatments. So I think time is up. So I have some conclusion based on its initial results. So at least that overall we have 2 crop model perform in general quite well. And also it capture quite in the gradient of the soil N and N stress among different fertilizer treatments. Of course, that the overestimate of the biomass or yield and labor index show that there are uncertainty in the measure data, also for the modeling parameterization. So caution should be paid when you want to apply the crop model. I mean, this could be the outcome of this work. Of course, the uncertainty using a different soil and climate data by depend on the models, also depend on fertilizer treatments. And of course, that this is the initial work and would like to integrate further for the work and before you want to upscale them to the regional scale in Ghana or I think in another context. So thank you for your time. It's up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like to take the first question. I hope maybe I'm a little bit autocratic. Bear with me. Okay. So you use 5 tons of manure. Yeah, it's very much because the yield were also just 4 tons, but the highest yield. And 5 tons of manure, it's a lot. And from the area you are working with in manure, the fodder is of poor quality, so it affects also manure production.
I think competition between the and animal food also with another thing.
So once they have low feed, this is an area with 8 months of dry season and everything dries. When I say dry, everything is gone from the field. So 5 tons is a lot for a small farmer even they struggle to get manure.
I think I can try to answer, but I think colleague can answer better.
And the second thing is that also this is the region with the poorest people in that region. And having that 60 tons of N, I don't think it's too realistic.
60 kg of N, 60 kg.
It's not realistic for the region, so.
Let them please answer.
Yeah. From Lagos.
Yes, from University of Ghana.
Okay.
Okay, so you first asked about the manure, and this is not a manure from the straw, from the residue from the crop. It's actually manure from a commercial manure, which is called fertisol. And it's a manure that's being produced, promoted in the north. That was a manure that was applied for this experiment. And then in terms of the nitrogen that was applied, even though it's high, several studies show that 60 kg is what is necessary to produce the optimum yield for maize. Beyond that, you could have a lot of leaching and then the fertilizer becomes useless to the plant. But 60 kg is what is recommended because of the poor nature of the soils within the region.
Question is, are farmers able to, because we are doing research to be not the recommended rate, but is this realistic for the smallholder to implement?
So you are coming up with recommendations for a farmer. If we are coming up with recommendations that will still not produce the optimum yield for the farmer, then what are we doing? As a researcher, we are supposed to come up with recommendations that would best improve the yields from the farmer.
Yes, I guess that the next step that would like run more, let's say, project, and that's we can do.
This is why participatory is so valuable at the get-go. It's like, you've worked all this time to find out what's the maximum opportunity for yield. And then if it's not realistic for a farmer, what do you say? Okay, use 1/8 of that and you'll get 1/8 of the yield? That's kind of disheartening for both the researcher and the farmer.
I think I understand perfectly what you are saying, but the idea here was to test different practices. Are those practices realistic? This is a next step we intend to do later on. Yes, so the social part will be involved in the next study, but in this one, this is just the result of the crop modeling.
That first step that you just described, which is presented here, but the second step that you hope to achieve recommendations. Do you see any value in that opportunity?
I guess that in terms of crop modeling, we need to run the crop model at the optimum, more or less at the crop condition, and then we go down the crop model to go to limited conditions. So I guess that from that point, the next step that we should run, given let's say input, let's say scenario, and you can catch us through.
Okay, we have to move to the next. You can discuss over dinner. We are running out of time. We will move to the next presentation, which is on compost and biochar to improve crop productivity in Rwanda, and it's Masabo Jean-Luc Tuizenge, who will be holding the presentation.
Next is next. You just press this arrow.
Okay.
Right arrow.
No. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, my name is Jarik Masabo. I am from Rwanda. And
Or raise it.
this one? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So I think this minutes is going to be not counted, right? All right. Yeah, I am from Rwanda, and my name is Jarik Masabo. I was really joking with my fellow Kenyans over there, and then I told them I truly believe, on my opinion, that Rwanda is now the capital city of Africa. That's my opinion, right? And yeah, for sure. But like, even if we are this kind of capital city of Africa, we are still facing some problems, right? And then this problem is that the population is really increasing so fast, and we are highly population dense in Africa. So then 530 people is that the people who are living in 1 kilometer square. You can imagine how we are stressing our land, like agriculture land is really facing a lot of stress. So to my point of view, we are really dramatically decreasing the soil fertility. So then our target or our objective in this kind of study was to show that we can again give back life to soil. So then through all this declining soil fertility, which limits the crop yield, all this kind of stuff, then what we are doing is there is a research gap. We don't have any systematic data or systematic information which provide this kind of information for how much, let's say, how much are we decreasing in the soil fertility, and also how much are we losing the crop, the soil health. So then we believe that compost and biochar can play really a crucial role, as it has been shown through the literature. So that's when we started, me and my team, to start doing a kind of research. So then we can have a systematic approach on this issue where we have two constructing field in the north field and also in the south. In the north region is where we have a very fertile soil because it's a volcanic soil, which is really fertile, as you can imagine. It's in the north region. And then the south region is a forested soil, which is less fertile. Then we wanted to see how much and what changes can be done if we use compost and biochar and any kind of additive in the soil. So in the north, there is, we have the randomized plot with the 4 replication, control, biochar, control and compost. This compost is from urban waste. So correct waste from the city, and then from this waste, we produce compost there. And also vermicompost, the vermiculture, and then NPK with calibrated 1717, because that is what available on the Rwandan market. So then we try to mix again compost from the organic waste with NPK and also NPK with vermicompost. So within this randomized plot with 4 replication. So the measurement, our idea was to check on crop yield, which was most of the time, this maize and beans, potatoes are very popular in Rwanda. This is what every farmer sees himself in this kind of crop. So the soil property we are checking on the physical and chemical, but biological one, there were no there were no specific lab there to check on this biological. That's why we have limited in physical and chemical. Then our focus really was on carbon binding. As you can see, the north part of Rwanda is we have like a volcanic high plateau, and then when you go to south, it's a central plateau, and then you can even tell by the altitude in this agroecological zone. So then region end result, the region N in the north, as we said, the crop yield. When we take NPK with compost, we saw the yield of 13.4% since March 2023 until now, because it's a long-term project which we are projecting to stay there for 10 years. So the compost only gives 7.4%. We see it very clearly on the graph, and the vermicompost also plays a crucial role. On the soil carbon, vermicompost show this is not absolute increase, it's a relative increase, which is 2.1 after 6 rotations. So the agronomical results, we found that compost from urban waste, this is compost, with NPK really shows the highest, it performs on the best. And also compost alone also was really nearly, because when you consider this north region, the soil is already fertile. So then the second rotation on beans, the compost one, of course, from the urban waste and NPK shows the best, but really surprisingly, vermicompost with NPK shows a dramatic increase on the beans. So which is different on potatoes. Then on the maize, we show that compost 1 still performed the best, and compost 2, we don't really know until now what happened because we are still investigating, because compost 2 didn't really play a key point when you compare to NPK. Yeah. So then when we check on the region south, the soil is really less fertile. Here we are talking about the pH, which is equal to 3.9. Very, very poor. And when you check about the cation, the cation exchange capacity, the soil is less saturated. So which shows that when we are planting beans there, the size of one plot is 15 meters square. It's it's 15 meters square, 3 to 5. When you check this, we have only 1.2 gram in this 15 meters square. But when we put compost and the biochar in the south region, we found that it's 3.04 kilogram. At least we find something there. The combination of biochar, this is from the tree species which called Cetrera serrata, which has like the rhyming effect and also the rhyming effect, and also the contact surface is really high. So the porous, it can stock the micronutrient in a very specific way, which is even available for the plant. So even for the maize, so still compost and the biochar shows really the good increase. When you compare from the control, the compost plus biochar, then it gives like for the maize biomass, we saw that it's 64 after 2 rotations. It's boost increasingly. So then the soil result, what we have now, because we are just focusing on the carbon binding, this is carbon nitrogen ratio we are talking about, but we have a huge amount of data from any range of maybe 3 in the RAB. We have all kind of nutrient you can imagine. So then from this NPK with the compost one, we saw that it is like increasing up. This is like relatively percentage. It's not absolute, because in only 3 rotation, you cannot have this kind of percentage. So even the interesting result I want to share here is the changing, this fluctuation of vermicompost, this is which was showing there, it's now going in the decrease, and even NPK. We were starting on the high, but it is going on the decrease. So, and then even on a nitrogen level, on the control, it's going down. But after the beans harvest, because beans, we know that it's a nitrogen fixation, it has always play with the nitrogen things. So then from our point of view, every time for this soil-based management, it have to be really tailored according to the agroecological context. In our agroecological context, in the north region, it's better to mix this. It's like it's better for synergy for the integrating compost and vermicompost with mineral fertilizers, as our past presenter said. So the compost and the biochar in the less fertile soil, we have seen that it has a huge impact. So to conclude this, it's better to scale up on the compost and the mineral fertilizer, and also this can lead to a change in the agriculture perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, a lot of questions. Okay. So Kira, only two. So who raised his hands? Okay, maybe she should.
So I'd like to know, thank you for the nice presentation. I'd like to know what was the starting point of the soils. So because you didn't show like the initial conditions of the percentage of soil organic carbon in your soils.
Yeah.
And also when you show like an increase in 60% of the biomass, what yields, like what are the average yields for the trials?
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, as I said before, the north region is more very fertile. So we started on the carbon percentage. It was even some of the plot was even on 9, other was on the 10% of carbon ratio. This is a very high fertile soil. So then with the increase, it was going to 0.4, 0.5, 0.8%. Yeah, but in the north, we only have the result from the starting. So because of accessing RAB here in Hanover, we are now, I will analyze this in this October. So then that's the thing, that's the increase.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. My question is, at the start of the experiment, just a follow-up to what she asked. What are the constraints in the north compared to the south to which these compost additions with the combinations of the biochar is supposed to resolve? Were they considered in the, because I only saw randomized plots, I don't know how the the robustness of the design to bring out some of these nuances. My second question is, are these crops that you tested actually responding to the constraints that you've identified in these soils? Thank you.
Okay. Before we start, either in the north or in the south, so we started by taking soil samples for sure, and then we randomized the prod. So we have like 4 replication for each treatment. So we took samples, we analyzed them as T0 as initial data, and then we apply this compost and vermicompost and this kind of mixture. And then after harvest, we also took sample and then we analyzed them to find difference. So that was the guideline. And yeah.
What did you analyze them for?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, on the physical property, we did all this kind of like water content, bark density. We analyzed all kind of physical.
Soil texture.
Yeah, for sure. Soil texture for sure. I did condom for myself, right? All the soil texture. We were finding which amount, percentage of clay, seed, everything. We have this data for sure.
Physical, what about chemical?
The chemical we did, first of all, I just did the pH as to its initial.
Okay.
No, we did pH. No. On the chemicals, so on the chemical we did pH, we did mineral nitrogen, we did chemistry where we extract all available nutrient, phosphorus, nitrogen. Yeah.
Okay, I
think it's interesting because you started with a political statement. This is what happens when you play with politics. So someone also wants to.
It's all right. It's all right.
Okay, thank you very much for the good presentation. I want to echo what my colleague have just asked. One was the baseline, of which that one we really needed to know. I understand that if you are presenting the soil organic carbon in that late, which is very high, and you said that the soil pH was about 3 point something.
Okay.
I really wonder how this, it is very contradicting. And then I understand whenever the pH is very low, we have some kind of minerals that are fixed, that is kind of phosphorus. And then something, a point of correction, when it comes now to the presentation of yield, it's good to give us in kgs per hectare.
For sure.
That one is going to be good for us to be in a position to understand. And then you termed it as a long-term trial.
Yeah.
How many years has it been to be in a position to understand? Because I have been learning long-term trials that have been for more than about 30 years now. And we are still struggling to understand about the rate at which you have a projection of soil organic carbon leasing in this country.
So to be more specific, this result is not, I said pH 3.9 to 4.1 is in the south, not in the north. In the north, where the soil is fertile, is where we have this data. So then the pH is not a problem in the north. So be assured that pH of 3.9 cannot have a carbon content which is 10 or 11. So this is totally different. So the long-term period, what we are talking about is 10 years. So you know that you can start and then you apply a fertilizer. So on the first rotation, there is data can boost up or can remain there. So over the long period, we have a stability where there is no change or where there is a slightly only short change. So that's what we are looking for. We are just still looking on data, analyze them all over this period.
Okay, thanks very much for this. We have to, you have to continue it after the session. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. We have one more speaker, which is Jamilo, and he will take us to Niger. Please stay for Jamilo and listen also to his presentation.
Where is yours? Gabier? Okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. Dear auditor, my name is Jamilu Gabe. I am from Abdul Mumin University, Niger. I welcome you to my presentation on determinant of inappropriate phytosanitary practices in off-season irrigation in the Gulumrad Valley. So this study is a part of FLORA project, promoting academic capacities for sustainable agricultural resource use in West Africa. Our presentation plan is as follows: introduction, methodology, result, and conclusion. In introduction, so agriculture is the most important human activities in sub-Saharan Africa. Besides being the mainstay of food supply, these activities is a major source of employment and income. So in sub-Saharan Africa, agricultural sector contribute more than 17% and 50% in terms of GDP and providing jobs to the population. In Niger country, this sector contributes more than 40% and nearly 84% in terms of GDP and providing jobs to the population. In Niger, this activity is nevertheless essentially rampant, and it remains also dependent on climate change. In addition, other constraints like pest attack, lack of fallow, soil infertility, so contribute to the loss of producers' yield. It should be noted also that in sub-Saharan Africa, the population growth rate is around 2.5%. In Niger, the average is 3.8%, which is among the highest population growth rate in the world. So there is a need to increase food productivity by at least 70% by 2050, according to Food Agricultural Organization. And the solution for that is to practice intensification of agriculture. Our Niger country is an excellent land of irrigation because of its capacity of in terms of water resource. Nevertheless, this intensification of agriculture, coupled with the climatic and agroecological biodiversities, leads to the proliferation of multiple bioaggressors like caterpillar, mites, aphid, weeds, and disease, which can contribute to a decline in yield and income of producers. So to fight against this pest, farmers are increasingly using pesticide. However, these products are essentially very toxic. Some studies revealed that farmers that handle this product are almost all out of school. This means there is a lack of understanding in terms of pictogram of pesticide. So the risk of a potential health and environmental contamination. For example, around 400 million of intoxication cases were inventoried in the world, and 44% concern agricultural workforce. Among this number, nearly 200,000 of population were dead, and 95% were in developing countries. So if you know that pesticides are very harmful for our health and environmental contamination, there are very few studies on the diagnosis of pesticide use practices in Niger, particularly on the factors that influence them inappropriately. That is why this study aims to analyze the determinant of inappropriate phytosanitary practices of producers in Gulumbrad Valley. And to reach this goal, it involves to characterize the phytosanitary practices of producers in terms of proportion of good and unsuitable practice, considering the respect of the dose of treatment, frequency of treatment, pre-harvest interval, and the safety measure. And finally, to identify the factors that influence them inappropriately. So this study is conducted in Gulumrad Valley, which is the main watershed of Maradi region. It takes its source in Katsina, in Nigeria, and flowed throughout Niger, for approximately 50 kilometers, irrigating 3 departments, Madarumfa, Marat City, and Gidanrunji, and flows then into Nigeria in Rima River. Inside this valley, irrigated crops are practiced with an intensive use of pesticide. So to collect our data, a survey was conducted from December 2022 to January 2023. After stratified random sampling, 692 producers aged between 16 and 83 years were interviewed. Through this interview, some data relative to the local name of pesticide and their source of supply were collected from pesticide sellers. So the data collected were analyzed using SPSS software. Descriptive statistics were generated and displayed in means standard deviation frequencies. A logistic binary regression model was used to explain the socio-demographic characteristics that influence the producer's phytosanitary practice. So this table shows us the independent variable and our variable of interest written in the frame of this study. So the independent variable are the socio-demographic characteristics of respondent that are age, experience, pesticide training, mode of accession, education level, and the number of operators. So our variable of interest, which is the producer's phytosanitary practice, take the value 1 when the producer's phytosanitary practice are inappropriate and 0 otherwise. So inappropriate practice are the non-complying with the dose of treatment, frequency of treatment, pre-harvest interval, and the safety measures. This table shows us that in Gulbi-Maradi Valley, around 77.9% of producers had inappropriate practices with non-complying of the dose of treatment, pre-harvest interval, frequency of treatment, and the safety measure. In terms of the factors that influence the producers' phytosanitary practice, this table shows us that the socio-demographics that contribute significantly are age, pesticide training, you have education level, and the experience. But among these variable, pesticide training is the most important one, based on the odd ratio, because producers who receive training on pesticide are 99 times less likely to have inappropriate phytosanitary practice than those who didn't. In conclusion, the socio-demographic profiles that affect significantly the producers' phytosanitary practice are age, experience, pesticide training, and education level. This study highlights the importance of pesticide training. So it seems necessary to take measures to strengthen producers' capacity through training sessions and by raising their awareness of the risk associated with pesticide use in order to contribute to the health security of producers and also to the sustainable production of irrigated crops in this valley. Thanks you to your kind attention. Waiting to your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamil. We have time only for one very, very short question, if there is one. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I have two quick questions. I think they are all. I'm asking the second for those who are unable to ask. Sure. Your first objective was to look at the types of phytosanitary, but I don't see that answered in your conclusion. And secondly, the second question is, does the kind of farmers you talk to attach phytosanitary to just one crop? Though, because there's a possibility that the level of phytosanitary training depends on the type of crop they are exposed to. Was that considered in your question? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. I start with the first one. So you talk about the phytosanitary practice which didn't appear in my conclusion. So the objective is to analyze the determinant of producers' phytosanitary practice. But in order to reach this goal, you have to pass to see the proportion of good and unsuitable practice of producers. But the objective real is to see the determinant. So which factor influence the producer's phytosanitary practice? That is why, so you did not highlight the phytosanitary practice of producer in conclusion, but the proportion of unsuitable practice is around 77.9%. So for producers that are inappropriate practice is around 77.9%. So
it was an objective. I don't know, maybe I misread your first objective, but maybe you can talk later.
Yes, please. That's a very good idea. You continue talking about the session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabina. Because there's another session starting now, and we also have now a poster session on nutrient management and amendments starting now in the 10th.